Businesses tend to focus on revenue, profits, and getting loyal customers. But how about healthy workplace culture? You're listening to How I Turned the Corner, where Kendra Prospero leads eye-opening conversations that most business leaders avoid. The right way to address employee challenges. Listen to real-life stories of workplace struggles, giving you valuable advice on what must be done to make every employee truly satisfied and fulfilled in their job. This is for leaders who want to create great company cultures and for employees who want to do something to put an end to suffering at work in the most practical ways possible. Here's your host, Kendra.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am Kendra Prospero, the host of How I Turned the Corner. And as a CEO and founder myself, I have found over the years that I spend kind of my time equally thinking about the same things. And the first one would be, I'm always thinking about my products and services and are they enough? Are they competitive? Are they priced right? But then equally, I think about cash. Sometimes it's where to find it. Sometimes now it's how to spend it. Yes. And then third, I am thinking about my team. Are they happy? Do they like what they're doing? Are they wanting to have different experiences? I am constantly thinking about those three things. And I couldn't tell you which one I spend more time on because it feels so equal to me. But after working with hundreds of leaders over the years, I've realized that I'm kind of unique in that way. Most people don't think about their people as often as I do. Well, I'm extremely excited to introduce you today to our guest, Vic Drabicky with January Digital. Not only have they experienced 60% growth in 2021, and they were recognized for it as the fastest growing company, but they have also been recognized as a best place to work, which in the digital marketing industry is, I find, very hard to earn. He and I would say, are cut from the same cloth in many ways, because as we have been chatting, he cares as much about his people as he does about his business. And so I'm extremely excited to share more about how he thinks, what he's done, the things he's messed up, and the things in places where he has turned the corner. So Vic Drabicky, welcome to How I Turned the Corner.
Oh, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. And I appreciate the acknowledgement too. I mean, we've worked really, really hard to try to be a best-in-class place for people to work, but also be a good company too. So we're trying to find that balance for sure.
Yeah, it's challenging. Well, before we dive into that, I mean, just to give everybody a little bit more context, what do you guys do over there at January Digital?
Sure. We have two businesses. We are a digital marketing agency where we buy, place, optimize digital media for some of the world's largest brands, pretty heavy in retail and CPG, everyone from The Honest Company to David's Bridal to a whole host of other luxury brands. Then we have a full consulting firm, and this is where we actually sit in-house as a CMO or a chief digital officer or a whole bunch of other things to help solve some of the biggest challenges that brands have. And so it's a nice little combination of very strategic work and very tactical work, both of which are super people heavy. So we are a people business more than anything else.
Yeah. That's similar to us too. So that's great. Well, so tell us about your team. Like, what's it made up of? How many people do you have?
Oh my gosh. It depends on the day. We're up to about 100 people or so. We're growing really quickly. The last few years have been really sharp growth, starting with about the mid-year just after the pandemic. So I think we went into the pandemic with maybe about 35 people or so, and we're up to about 100 now. So it's been really, really fun, but also stressful and trying at times too.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds actually a little bit overwhelming. So
there's days where it's overwhelming, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But then there are also good days too. You just got to try to average them all out. And if your average is on the positive side, then you're doing something good.
Yeah, that's true. Tell me about that journey as a leader, though. I mean, you founded this, so there were days early on, right, where you could turn around and talk to your team, and they were right there. It's not the case now. So, I mean, what is that? How have you grown as a leader, and what have you noticed about yourself over the years in terms of how you had to change?
Yeah, I think what I've learned more than anything is that I had to change a ton. And I say that honestly. I didn't start the company because I was like, hey, I'm a great leader. Let's go get a bunch of people and they'll follow me. That definitely wasn't the case. I felt like I was somebody who was good at product and was good at the services that we provide. And I was okay at at managing a team, but I wasn't a leader by any means. And so it's taken a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of screw ups to kind of get where we are today. And right as I felt like I was getting better, then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden now you had to learn how to lead in a totally different way, in a totally remote way. And so there's been a ton that I've learned about myself, everything from how I deliver to how I take in information to what's most important to me, to what do I share with people versus what do they share with me, and how do we balance all of those things together to try to, I'd say this sounds weird, but to try to make me the best leader that I can be. By no means am I a finished product. I screw things up pretty assuredly every day. But I think the screw ups maybe are not quite as bad as they used to be when I started.
Yeah, I have a mantra that is, I am not the leader I need to be a year from now, but I will grow.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I think. And that's maybe one of the hardest things about running a business is that, and maybe everybody else understands this and I don't, but when you hire people and you start building a company, they kind of look at you and sort of expect you to know what to do. And a lot of days I don't know what to do. I'm learning this along the way and I'm gonna screw it up. And I think sometimes that pressure upward, and not only as CEOs or founders, but whether you're a VP or whatever else it might be, people expect you to have more of the answers than maybe you do. And the approach we've tried to take here, and I've got great people around me to help me do this, is to be really open when I don't know something, but I'm going to go figure it out. And we found that builds a lot of great credibility with the folks around you, who then give you the grace to make the mistakes, knowing you don't know it all and you're not pretending to know it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting how I find very few leaders feel comfortable being vulnerable with that. And I think that vulnerability actually strengthens us as leaders. I
think you're exactly right. And it also sounds like maybe you've read Brene Brown's book on vulnerability before.
Yeah, like every one of them.
And I would totally agree with you. I always struggle with it because I feel as though there's a fine line between being vulnerable and being seen as aimless or soft. And you've got to get those things just right. You want to show your vulnerability. You want to show the things of who you really are. But if the only thing you ever are is vulnerable and you don't actually have a path, well, now you're in trouble. And so it's important to make sure you know the things you know really well. You're vulnerable about the things you don't. You keep those things in balance. Mm-hmm. If you get out of balance, maybe you're way too far out to be actually doing what you do. And if you're never vulnerable or you feel totally comfortable, then you're probably being too conservative and not pushing yourself enough.
Mm-hmm, definitely, I agree. Have you, would you mind sharing one of those moments where you were a bit more vulnerable with your team and what happened?
Let me go through my Rolodex of like a million of them. I'll tell you that maybe one that still sits with me that's really hard, and I still have no idea if we did the right way, which is when COVID hit. We are a retail heavy business, and within the first 6 weeks, we lost about 75% of our company.
Yes, I have a friend that just had that same thing in his digital marketing agency. Yes,
it's just unbelievably tough. And it's so hard to think back to those times of you've got personal strife, you've got business strife, you've got all sorts of things. Like you can see this thing that you've been building for years crumbling down around you with absolutely no recourse. And so we had to sit down and we have a phenomenal COO who helped me every day talk through this of how we were going to restructure contracts and do all these things. And unfortunately, during that time, we ended up having to lay a few people off. We were a smaller organization, and so it didn't feel right to send emails to people. And so instead, what we decided to do is we decided to do them over Zoom one by one. But we couldn't do them all at once. So we told everyone, look, unfortunately, we have to go through this. And so there was like an hour period that it took us to go through all of those things. We thought we were doing the right thing by being individual with people. And the feedback we got afterwards was that was the most dreadful hour they've ever had of their life, not knowing if they're getting laid off or not. Mm-hmm. And so I had to stand in front of the whole company and be like, look, I thought that was the right thing. It was the caring thing to do. I didn't mean for it to back for this way. I totally screwed that up. That's on me. Please know my intentions were right, but my execution wasn't the way it should have been. Right. And, I was very lucky that we've got a great team who said, look, we know you to be generally a good person. We know you screwed up, but we give you the benefit of the doubt. You tried your best. And just being able to come forth and just admit that mistake was a really hard one for me because I was trying so hard to do the right thing. And so I think we've tried to model things after that. Like whenever we mess something up, we try to just be upfront about it and go, look, guys, here's what the mistake was. Here's how we got to that endpoint of how we thought it was right. We think, given the information you have, you would get to that same endpoint too. And here's what we learned from it, and here's how we'll change next time. And so as long as we've taken that approach with each of our mistakes, people have rewarded us with saying yes, or even if they disagree, they'll come and say, I disagree, I would have thought of it this way, at which point you're having a much better conversation. But we just try to we've used that as our sort of lesson and sort of our model to follow.
Yeah, for us, 2019 was our horrible year. We lost like $300,000 worth of business in the last quarter. And I had to do layoffs. I mean, I was literally making payroll with like $100 in the bank account, and I was celebrating. I was like, yes, I did it again. Right. It was so brutal. And so, so then when 2020 hit, I was like, all right, this is our year. Right. And then when COVID came around, I felt like I had just gotten off the battlefield, was in the medic tent. And now suddenly I'm like back on the battlefield again. It was so brutal. It was such a hard time.
It's been real. I will say this. I know everybody says it sounds cliche, but if you think of like from 2020 till now, the amount of sort of monumental shifts in the world, between COVID and then you have massive change around George Floyd, and you have a massive election, and then you have more COVID, and you have recessions, and you have a war, you have these things. It's become really hard. It seems as though the amount of big things to deal with has been compressed into a time frame. And so if you're not careful, you just run from fire to fire instead of saying, look, I made it through the first portion of COVID and we're still here. Let's celebrate that moment for a second. Then let's move on and challenge and and deal with the next challenge. But I definitely feel you on that one.
Yeah. Well, I think you just bring up something that's, I think is really neat, in that we can always look for the sort of the victimhood in it, right? To be like, why does this keep happening to me? Or we can say, what's the opportunity right now? Yeah. And for me, when COVID hit, I mean, even though I had just gotten off the battlefield, I was looking around like for the first time in my life, I had space, I had time, I could think, of which I realized, which we were talking about earlier, that I too hate sales. I don't like pushing my company. So I was like, I got to get off the sales bandwagon. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. But I had not taken the time to think. And since then, like, we've just made massive transformations in our company because of the opportunity that came out of COVID. So I think that that's another really key leadership thing, is just always looking for that. What is the opportunity in this disaster?
Oh, you're exactly right. I mean, you have to, right? If the second you lose focus, and the second you think there is an opportunity, like it's already your past. Like you've got to move on then. And I'm a firm believer, and I think most founders think this way, is next year is always going to be your best year.
Yeah.
Like next year is always the best year. To your comment earlier, like, I'm going to be the best leader I can next year. It's the same thing. Like you got to think that. The second you stop thinking that, then maybe it's time for a larger shift.
Absolutely. So what do you do to, let me ask you this. Did you hire back any of your alumni? Any of the folks you had to let go? Oh, good.
Did. I'll tell you, there's this woman on our team. Her name is Kenzie, but she was someone who was new that we ended up having to lay off. And we basically had to lay her off, not because she was bad, because she was new and the timing wasn't right. And we told everybody, we said, look, we have no idea how this thing is going to last, but none of you are getting laid off because you're bad people. It just can't happen. And, she was someone who very meticulously, about once a month, said, hey, look, I know you might not be ready yet, but I went and took this course. I went and learned this thing. I went and did this. And I have to tell you, she was the very first person we called, and she came back, and she's been absolutely incredible across our entire company, just the way that she's operated and affected other people. And just that resilience that she showed, we just value so much. So she's just like the shining star. It made me feel so great to be able to do that. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I'll point this out, that's a testament to the way you did the layoff. And that when you can hire back your alumni, it means you did do it with grace and you did do it well.
I hope so. I don't know, but I appreciate you saying that. I'd like to think that. We really have this goal of that. We know it's not always going to work out with everybody here. Sometimes it's going to be our fault. Sometimes maybe the fault is more on them, or sometimes there's something else to blame that causes it to just not work out. But we hope is that we always treated people right. And when they left with grace. And we hope that when they look back on us, they might say, it didn't work out, but I understand who the people are and who the company are. And I believe them to be good people. If we did that, then we're going to be in good shape. We might not always see eye to eye, but that's okay. As long as we can respect each other as good people, then I feel pretty okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've been amazed at that. Even some of the people that I have let go, we're still in community together.
Yeah.
And which I had never thought of business as a community. People call it a family, and I'm always like, I don't know about that, right? Because you don't really fire your family, but it is community. And even the folks that have come and gone, like I'm still in touch with them. Some of them hire us to do training for them. Some of them are they still refer us. And I just think like, that's pretty darn cool. I mean, there's maybe one or two that I will hope I never see again, but
yeah, I was gonna say it always works out. There's definitely one or two that we've royally screwed up, and there's always, you look back on it with a little bit of embarrassment, and there's one or two that you're like, okay, that was on you. We couldn't have done anything better. And you look back and hope you had made a better decision in hiring next time. Yeah. But for the most part, I agree with you 100%.
Well, so then coming back around then, so what do you do when you are getting ready to hire? Like, what is your process because I noticed you have a lot of openings right now.
We do.
So what is your process for figuring out what you really need?
Yeah. So there's always a business side of it. And there's we always begin with the business side and go very specifically, what is the business need? And then we always look at it over courses of time. Is this a business need we have for 1 month, 6 months, a year, or sort of unending? We've got growth. We need to add more people to it. And so the very first thing we do is we look at what the need is, and that allows us to map the skills. Once we map the skills we need, we can then map the cost against that. Once we have that, then we can go to the market and go, okay, we need this type of job at this level, and this is what our pay range is going to be. And I think that's where most companies probably stop. And that's an okay place to stop. But we've tried to take it a step further, knowing that our culture and our values are so much important to us. We then go a step further and we use in-house recruiters. We use some external, but we really use in-house recruiters who, in that very initial screening call, go, are you aware of our traits and values? If not, I'm going to walk you through those. We make sure that we have a very diverse and equitable process for recruiting candidates. We require diversity in all of the initial screenings and the second level interviews as well. And then when people meet with us, they meet with multiple levels of people and multiple people who go everything from hard skills to soft skills and everything in between. Mm-hmm. What we want, and we say this up front in interviews, and I say it religiously, is in an interview, what we don't want is you to give your best self and us to give our best self. What we want is you to give your true self, and we'll tell you our true self, the good, the bad, the ugly, so that when you show up on day one, you are what we expected and we are what you expected. Because anything less means we're now in this really awkward marriage that is going to last somewhere between 3 months and a year until someone feels okay leaving it. And that's just a really bad spot for everyone.
Yes, you are so right.
Even using that process, we still miss without a doubt. But we try to do that up front. We try to make sure the business case and the soft values, the traits, all those things are right in line from the get-go. If so, then the chance of you finding someone who fits with your believes in the same things, not necessarily the same thing as you, or the same way, believes in the same things as you, and aligns with the skills, the chance of that happening, it goes up quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I start every interview off with, hey, I know this is a really stressful day for you, and I'm so grateful that you're here. And my whole goal is I want you to love this job. And I will lay all my cards on the table for you and tell you anything you want to know, because if I want you to love the job.
So great. I'm going to steal that line.
Yeah.
No, because I just think that's such a great way of doing it. You got to find a way to break down that sort of invisible barrier that like they're selling themselves to you, like they're selling a version of themselves. You've got to find a way to break that down and figure out who they really are. And you've got to be like really who you are as a company.
Right.
Let them know the bad things, let them know the hard things, let them know the good things. Just find that right balance of all those things. If you do that, man, you can really start people off on the right path.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think another thing you said that is probably been the thing that has made the biggest difference for me is hiring to those values. And I mean, the skills are important, but a lot of times they can be taught. And a lot of times you kind of want to teach them the way you do it anyway, not on everything, but it's that hiring to the values. And when I first opened up this business, I was like, really? I mean, seems so fluffy, right? And we don't have time for that. Sure. But it has ended up being the thing that has actually kept our people on our team really moving. We have not, aside from the layoffs I had to do because of cash flow challenges, we've not had any bad turnover in 6 years.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's amazing. Like the idea that that's not on a plaque behind you is surprising, because that's absolutely phenomenal. You got to be thrilled. You've got to be thrilled with that.
Yeah. It's again, eating our own dog food. We better do it right if we're going to be out there consulting with companies and telling them how to do it. Right?
Well, I'll tell you, you spoke of values, and I don't know if you feel this way, but finding out what your company values are or what your personal values are is way harder than it seems. And I find far too often either individuals or companies come up with very fleeting values. And then all of a sudden each year you're kind of adjusting them. And I know for us, myself, and there's a whole bunch of people that contribute this, but one of the key contributors is a woman named Megan Jones. She's my very first employee. She's still with us 10 years later. She's put her stamp all over this entire company. And it was hours upon hours over the course of several months of us sitting in a room and whiteboarding. Hey, I have an idea. Let me talk to you for 5 minutes, and slowly piecing these things together, again, with a lot of outside help too. And we came up with values that we firmly believe stand the test of time, are actionable, are measurable. You can point to how people do them. And then we've incorporated them in everything we do. And because it's one thing to just sort of put them on a wall. It's another thing to put them on the wall, say them at the beginning of every meeting, provide awards for people who fulfill them the most, share them with clients, tell them that's what they can hold you accountable to, tell clients you're going to hold them accountable to operating in a similar way, like really putting it in there. And so I think we began with some good values that it took us another year or two to figure out how to really like build them into the actual fabric of our company.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's perfect. And that's exactly what we recommend companies do, because you want to hire and you want to fire, and you want to manage and train, govern, promote, compensate against those values. And if you can't do that, then they're not real.
Yeah.
They're aspirational, they're inspirational, or they're accidental. And accidental values are the worst ones.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with you. We have this, this is going to sound like this is planted, but it's not. But everyone that joins in their welcome kit, they get this little card, which on the inside of it, it has our company motto and all of our values. And then on the back, some rules to guide us or how to act when you're here. And nice. For every single person, they get one of these, and it goes through everyone's onboarding. But at the end of their first week, I meet with every individual person and I talk to them about how we got to them, why they're important, how they can hold me accountable to them, the company accountable to them, and how we're going to hold them accountable. And while some of it's repeat from what they get in onboarding, I want them to hear it from me and why it was important to me to write this down, and why it affects our business and how it can affect our people. And so we really try from the beginning to just make sure it's unbelievably clear how important they are to us.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm going to steal that idea for me. I think that's
there we
really
go. Now we're one for one now.
Yeah, that's a really great idea. And I would imagine. Do you think that that's helped you with the sort of hockey stick growth that you've had?
I think it has. So being an agency, your business is people, right? It's the vast majority of your cost. And your product is how well your people are able to execute on your vision and execute on marketing campaigns and those sorts of things. And so for us, going through a ton of growth, if you have people in here who don't abide by your values, all of a sudden the way your clients or the industry can view your company can get skewed in a hurry. Mm-hmm. And so I can firmly say we've never hired someone, even those that didn't leave on the best of terms. There's not one person I would say that has been in our company since we've had these values that I think is a bad person. Mm-hmm. Right? They've had people that I say that really, really confidently. And so it's helped us to maintain our quality of work, even when times were tough during COVID or whatever it might be, even when there was stress. It's really helped us maintain our quality of work. And when you go to our clients and you ask them, how would you describe our team? So often you hear them spit back our values, which is like, okay, now we got it. And if clients see it without being prompted, we really nailed it. And so that's something that I think is really strong.
Hey, tell us what your values are. What's in that book?
So we do them a little bit differently. So we have what I would say is 4 values, but we pair them together. So there's really 7, but we pair them together. So the first 2 are informed but curious. We expect everyone to show up with a well-informed opinion that you're ready to share, but you're not so arrogant as to think yours is the only opinion. The next 2 that pair together are driven but collaborative. We want people who are unbelievably eager and hungry to make progress and to learn and drive themselves and the company forward. but we don't want a single person who is only centered on doing that for themselves. And so what we always tell people on the collaborative side is you got to bring people along with you. And as you progress here, part of your ability to progress is how many people on your team have grown, gotten promoted, learned more, so on and so forth. Direct but kind. This is a direct steal from a woman named Kim Scott in her book, Radical Candor. Yep. We should be unbelievably direct with our feedback, but you can only do that if you've spent the time so that people know you genuinely care about them. And then our last one, so our fourth one on that is fun. We're still just selling clicks on the internet, right? We're still a digital ad agency. It's important that we do it exceptionally well. It's important that we have a drive and a curiosity and all those things to do great things. But at the end of the day, it's still important that we sit down and we have some fun together, not as a family, but as colleagues, as parts of a team, as a community, as you described it earlier. It's important that we have fun together too. And that fun can be anything from a happy hour to just celebrating someone getting married, celebrating someone's promotion, spending a few minutes together, doing community service together, whatever it might be. There are a million ways to have fun, but it's important that we mix that in too.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
Thank you.
So with that in mind, then tell us, I noticed on your website that you have this Good Works program. What is that?
I will say this, it is something that I am most proud of that we've done. It was a dream and a half, and just in the last year or two, it's really come to be something that has taken on a life of its own. But the idea is that no matter what role you're in here, you're in a better spot than the vast majority of the world. And we'd be silly to only look inward. And so the premise we always had was that there are 4 things that prevent people from giving back. You don't have the time. So we give people unlimited time to volunteer in their communities. You don't have the money. We give people unlimited money to support causes within reason. You don't know where or how to do it, at which point we have people who are dedicated to just searching out opportunities and bringing them to the table for us. Or the 4th one is you're a jerk. If it's the 4th one, we don't want you in the company at all. Right. And so that's sort of the premise of it. And what we've done is we've said, we know if we go out into our communities, we will have an outsized impact on that community, because if we do something nice for someone, we're going to feel good about it. They're going to feel good about it. And someone else is going to see this happening and they're going to feel good about it too. Mm-hmm. And so it has a very much a multiplicative, you know what I mean, effect on it. And so over the years, it's continued to progress. It began as one Friday a month, the whole company would take off and we'd go volunteer. It's all the way now to where a good portion of our people's bonuses are based on the amount of hours and the amount of dollars our company gives back each year. And so we've given back over 5,000 hours. And at this point, I think we're over $300,000 or $400,000 that we've given back to our communities. Most recently, just this past year, we built what we call the January Room at a women's shelter. It's a place where kids can go and just be kids. They can play, they can learn, they can screw around while their mothers get counseling or legal advice. It's just a safe place for those kids. Now, it also provides a place for our folks to go and volunteer anytime they want. Mm-hmm. And so it's that combination of giving back to the community, but making sure we're always involved. We feel so passionately about it, and our people actually enjoy doing it. It's great. I love it. I'm really, really proud of that one.
That is really neat. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. We're really happy with how it's evolving.
Yeah, that's really neat. I love that. Well, so, with that in mind, I mean, I guess my last thing I would ask you is what do you do to keep growing and learning? You know, we mentioned earlier that my mantra, right, of that I'm not the leader I need to be a year from now, but I will grow. What do you do to continue to fuel yourself?
Yeah, this has been one of the hardest things for me. Without a doubt, this is one of the hardest things, is that the whole work from home, COVID, no travel, no anything. I'm very much a physical learner. I've got to be around. I've got to be able to see things. I've got to be able to experience it to kind of piece it together. So it's been really hard on me. And it took, quite frankly, about a year or so ago, my 2-3 key leadership members came to me like, you got to get out. You got to get out of your house. I don't care what you do. Go somewhere, break away from this and get your brain back to where it needs to be. And I've had to kind of restructure schedules and habits to force myself out of my house, out of the day-to-day of running the company, to make sure that I'm thinking enough. And so it started in little bits and pieces, which was I blocked off 20 minutes each morning to leave my house. And I didn't care if I was sitting at a fast food restaurant. I would spend those 20 minutes reading things, just from different folks outside the industry, different perspectives. And then it kind of evolved from there to, okay, maybe I can take like a day a month where I just do that, where I turn it all off when I go somewhere and I do something else. And it's kind of continued to progress from there. And now I'm back to spending a little bit more time going to whether it be a trade show or client meetings or just things outside of our organization to help give me perspective. And so I'm continuing to evolve on it. But I would say that the biggest takeaways for me is I still dedicate time each week to just reading things that don't have anything to do with my industry. They have to do with leadership or just different thought pieces or whatever it might be. Just reading those things, number one. Number two, I get out of my house a whole lot more. I walk a lot more and think a lot more. I turn it all off for a little bit more. And then three is just getting out and being around other people who have really smart perspectives that I can ask questions and kind of learn from. Those are the things more than anything else. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention, I have a pretty incredible leadership team around me that holds me accountable to that. I think they maybe just don't want me around so much, but either way, it's working. They pick me out a lot, and just taking my head away from the business is remarkably helpful.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. If I don't create that space to think, my body will wake me up in the middle of the night. My husband calls it my CEO meetings.
I feel the same way. My wife was like, "Oh my gosh, what is wrong with your sleeping? Like you can't because once you wake up and it turns on, you can't quite turn it off." And so while that still happens, finding other time to do that has been really helpful in curing some of those thoughts for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Well, on our kind of closing out here, tell us just one of the most crazy, weird benefits that you have that you provide that are not your traditional things that every company feels obliged to provide.
I have no idea what's crazy or not these days. Benefits are kind of all over the place. So there's some that I'll mention. We offer anytime someone here has a child, we set up $1,000 college scholarship for them when they're born that they completely own. I know it doesn't sound like that much, but $1,000, 18 years later, turns out to a pretty decent amount. We give everybody a couple $1,000s to spend on their own mental or physical health. There's very few restrictions, but there are restrictions to it. You can't blow it on something silly, but if you need a rowing machine, you want to pay for whatever it is, you have the ability to do that. We have the last Friday of every month is an all-company holiday for mental health. We let our clients know there's no meetings, there's no anything, there's not like an on-call. That's a sacred time for us. We have summer Fridays, which are half days. We have something like 20 plus company holidays too. We're trying to find the best mix of giving people time to themselves and giving them resources. We have mental, physical health folks come in and speak about once a month, once every 6 weeks. We try to mix all those things up. So I don't know if those things are crazy, but I think what my hope is that all of them build a complete perspective for people, and that 75% of them apply to people in the right way, right? Maybe you're young and you don't care about the scholarship, but you care about the mental health benefits and the extra days off and the flexibility in schedule or what have you. We try to do that. We try to find the right mix of all those things.
Gosh, all of those are awesome. So yes, that's a great list, Vic. That's an amazing list. So I need to ask that question to a lot of companies, and that's definitely a unique, not crazy, unique list.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. We're doing our best. There have been a lot of requests for pet insurance. We're not quite there yet, but we'll see. We'll see what the next year looks like.
It's all right. I have a Frenchie, so it's a scam anyway.
Got it. Okay, perfect. You know what? I'm recording this and taking this to my people. We'll see.
Well, my goodness, this was a wonderful conversation. I could talk to you all day long about all this. So thank you so much, Vic, for your time and sharing your insight. And just this is a very joyful experience for me. So thank you.
Thank you for joining this exciting episode. We hope this discussion brings you closer to a better, healthier, and more rewarding workplace everyone deserves to be a part of. If you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe to the podcast at turningthecornerllc.com/podcast. Don't forget to share this with your friends in the corporate world. And together, let's make this space a hub of growth and job satisfaction. If everyone loves where they are, they can always give their best without regrets. That's all for now. See you on the next one.